Audio test to Oslo. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Samspel med oss i kranene og personell på bakken, det at vi kan løfte det meste. Men selvfølgelig, det jo kjekt å kunne komme hit og fortelle det at i dag så har vi kunnet løfte Europas største båtlift. Det jo veldig stas.
Well, hello and welcome to Oslo. Hello and welcome to Oslo's brand new home after so many years in the Telenor, the Longines FEI Jumping World Cup Series here in Western Europe. The opening leg moving to a new venue and a capacity of about 5,000 a day, and I think they've been very successful in filling those seats out. And Oslo always with that great reputation for everything from that opening leg of the World Cup, and it's thrown out some incredible victories over the years, right down to pony and national and amateur show jumping as well. So covering the whole gamut and really helping support equestrianism in Norway. One of just a handful of International Equestrian Federation affiliated competitions in Norway, and how fantastic that it is at the highest level of our FEI Jumping World Cup Series. Our competition today, presented by Crane Norway, is a metre 50 class. There's about 48 in the start list, as you see there, having rattled through them, and it is a pre-qualifier class for the Longines FEI Jumping World Cup here later on this weekend. So the Agria Oslo Horse Show. Elio Travagliati of Italy is our designer for the track. And Soren Müller-Rode is going to be our first to go with the Askbred Grace. Grace and Soren were in action this year for Denmark at the European Championships at A Coruña in Spain. And actually jumping recently at some of the international shows at Riesenbeck in Germany, the home of Ludger Beerbaum there in the Münsterland. So Soren will be our trailblazer around this track. It's an interesting ring to design in because it is relatively square. You can see actually it feels a little bit wider than some of the other rings that we're familiar with from the indoor circuit, and it gives the designer a little bit more to play with in terms of, you can see, you know, we're looking at 4 or 5 fences maybe across the width of the arena, obviously using indoor material, so it is that little bit narrower. Saw a few riders just really walking and analysing that distance down to the colours of the Norwegian flag with the water tray just behind it. Triple combination. He has this right up against the side of the fence. Big wide oxer in the middle and a little bit of a push there out to the last part. I think that will be more rewarding for those who are really, really trying to take a winning time here. And I would imagine that our designer has had very much in mind the competitive nature of the field of riders, the competitive nature of the class with that single round of jumping. And Soren here, as can sometimes happen, Grace, having touched the one rail, then slightly loses heart and doesn't continue, you know, to get back into a nice shape of jumping, and has those 2 parts of the double at 11 down as well. So it's a grand total of 12 faults, 66 on the clock for our first to go.
From Germany,
Gerrit Nieberg and the eye-catching Ping Pong van der Lentemel. Ping Pong and Gerrit won the Longines Global Champions Tour Grand Prix at Riesenbeck this September. Of course, Gerrit, a career winner of the big Grand Prix at Aachen. Just for reference, our previous competitor, Søren Møller-Rode, with a 66 on the clock, 75 seconds the time allowed. So he's pacey enough. And interesting as well what Gerrit will choose to do here. Gerrit, with a lot of experience, and would potentially be thinking about Ping Pong as his horse for the World Cup qualifier here later on this weekend. So then it's just a question of what suits his horse and his program. Does he go all out and try and win this class? Or is this about getting in the ring, getting familiar with the kind of philosophy of the courses that we're going to see here over the weekend at Oslo, and set up then for the big win? And of course, those all-important World Cup points as well on the road to Fort Worth, the finals in Texas next April. Took that very, very short turn, and I think Ping Pong just surprised by the look of that fence. It's quite a solid filler, you know, it's 3/4 of a wall with a rail over the top of it. And you can see again how often the designer is going to those very, very wide ox as the A element of the double at 11, the last fence, the Agria as well, all very, very wide. 63 on the clock, 4 faults there for Gerrit and Ping Pong van der Lentemel as we start to really get into how this competition is going to ride, how this course is going to ride, and of course how the sport is going to play out somewhat. So Jessica Burke and her great partner Express Trend. Jessica was top 10 in the Grand Prix at the Birmingham Horse of the Year show in Great Britain just last weekend with a C. Patrick horse, C. Patrick Toulon. The Irish with a very good record here at Oslo with the victory for Richard Howley in recent seasons. Last year it was Gregory Wathelet victorious here in Oslo. But of course, that was in the Telenor Arena. Venue for the majority of this show's nearly 30-year history. Jessica on the very, very forward stride, and you can see how the triple combination rewards that kind of approach. There's a lot to look at in that kind of wall fence as well, with the very solid looking at around chest height, but it also has those diamond bases, so for the horses to look down and through it a wee bit as well. So this is going to be pretty comparable to Gerrit Nieberg's time, 65.71. That is our middling time at the moment, but unfortunately it is with 2 down for Jessica and Express Trend. So those 8 faults then for the Irish rider, the first of the Irish that we see in our starting field. So the Norwegian side getting to cheer one of their own here in the shape of Paul Flom. Paul and Mega Special DC, and I'm Special Demu's horse. And Mega Special again, a horse that we saw at A Coruña this summer, the Longines FEI Jumping European Championships. Also part of the Norwegian campaign in the Longines EEF Series Nations Cup semi-finals at Deauville. And Paul here picking up a very, very good active pace. I mean, this has the opportunity to be quite competitive here if everything stays up for him at this sort of pace. But again, such early days, you never quite know what's still to come in a starting order when you've got a field of horses and riders like will be assembled here at the opening leg of the World Cup Series. It's going to be interesting to sit back and do the little bit of analysis, because of course Oslo always used to run hand in hand with Helsinki at the beginning of the season. Helsinki now moving to the end of the season. Let's see whether that has any impact on the field at either of those events. I think Helsinki will get a boost. A boost in the other direction, with people maybe just looking for those last points to try and secure their place at the finals. Palflam, though, is clear. He's our first clear round at 64-24 for the Norwegian rider, putting them out in front. Table A format, of course, being clear inside the time, was going to go out in front anyway, but Gerrit Nyberg, with his 4 faults, that tiny bit faster, almost exactly a second faster. So who puts it all together, and is it possible to be going faster than Gerrit Nyberg and leave everything standing? Linda Bertomi and Happiness now, combination representing Italy. Linda jumping through some of the weeks of shows at Gassin-Saint-Tropez, where of course we had that final qualifying leg of the Longines League of Nations this year, a new venue for the League of Nations. Don't forget all those shows we've been mentioning, the Birmingham Horse of the Year show, Longines League of Nations, all of the World Cup series, and all available in the Clip My Horse FEI TV archive for premium members. If you do want to or need to catch up with any of those recent or a little bit longer ago events, as Linda Bertomi, Happiness, again, you can see how they're really having to reach the distances that our designer has set up through that triple combination. Of course, we're very well placed to see that in particular in this ring as well. Just letting the horse go a little bit to the left here. It's going to shorten up their approach to the last. It's 66-18, but that again, she's had to work a little bit on that time. You can see just trying to be as economic as possible. You know, if she'd been out in the middle, taking the longer lines, adding the distances, that could have been over 70 seconds. Would have still been inside the time, but Linda just trying to be as competitive as she can be there. So on then to rider who now shows for Great Britain. It is Same El Dahan and Oscar A. Same also a top 10 finisher in that Grand Prix at the Horse of the Year show in Birmingham in Great Britain. Same once again over at the Spruce Meadows Masters meeting, where of course he is a former winner. Always very, very competitive as well, Same. And a nippy rider, and you can see that every time he lands, he is, you know, moving up in the gear, making sure the horse is moving away from the jump, staying in front of the leg, and he's looking for those tightest possible lines to be accurate but conservative in the distance he rides. 64-24 to beat. Just by its very nature, you have to swing out quite wide there, but following Linda Bertomi there through the left shoulder over the second part of that double, and 63-31, that is not quite as fast as Gerrit Nyberg, still that seeming like the reference time, 63-26 from Nyberg, but Same does it with the 0 score, the clear round, and he goes into our lead. Olympic champion, world champion, European champion of our sport. Your own Dubbeldam, your own and Kentucky. Your own riding a couple of horses at the moment, and quite frequently at Riesenbeck. His partner, Annelies Vorsselmans, lined out for the first time at a League of Nations at Gassin-Saint-Tropez. Your own with that early rail here, unfortunately, in our meter 50 table A speed presented by Crane Norway. Again, I think it's really interesting where he set that kind of wall fence out of, very, very blind, more than 180-degree turn around the left shoulder, so that, you come around, you're worried about your position relative to the jump anyway, and then you have to factor in a potential reaction from your horse to their eye being very, very full of that wall. You're on Double Dam in Kentucky with 65 on the clock and 4 faults in the Table A penalties column. Will go into 5th position. So 22-year-old Marit Thijssen from the Thijssen family. Joviality, the ride. Mans, who's riding throughout the Morocco Royal Tour. The 3 weeks of competition there, including a Nations Cup, World Cup. And Joviality, a top 5 and top 10 in 4-star Grand Prix action out there in Morocco for Mans. Riding quite conservative here. I think there's a degree of bravery as well until you get it clear in your mind to really go as fast indoors as you might outdoors. And I think that's sometimes how the really top riders in the sport can make such a big difference at indoor classes. Even on younger horses, some of the classes during the course of this week here will be for the second horse, the non-World Cup qualifier horse. But the real pros can make such a big difference, and you sometimes see them coming home 3-4 seconds faster than some of the other riders in the class, and that's just their experience, having consciously got used to riding very, very fast indoors. So Mans here, already just behind the winning time, actually going to clip a rail at the double on the way home as well. He looked like the plan all the time had been to deliver a time of about that 72 or 73 seconds inside the time allowed, but with the 0 score, unfortunately not to be, and therefore it's going to be a very slow 4-faulter and goes into 6th position. The Norwegian Olympian and part of the famous Norwegian Olympic family, the Gulliksens. It is Vicky Gulliksen with Moonshine van Ameldonk. Interesting for Victoria this year. It's been a year of mostly, the next generation of horses. We saw her at Longines Global Champions in Monaco, but it was in the 2-star. We saw her at the Brussels FX Masters, but it was in the young horses. We saw her at Riesenbeck during Global Champions, and it was in the 3-star, including a good run in the Meter 50 Prestige Grand Prix of Nuremberg there at the German venue. No European Championships this year after that Olympics in Paris last year for Norway. Very, very assured, very fluent down there. Yeah, absolutely nailing the question as it was set by the designer through the triple combination line. Coming towards home. Now, is 63 seconds possible from here? About 8 seconds to go home? No. I think we're just going to be a little bit in arrears, but should be happy enough with a clear round out over the big wide Agri fence. 64.44 goes into 3rd place of now 4 clear rounds for Vicky Gulliksen, with Sami Eldahan remaining our leader in 63.31, so about 1.1 seconds faster for our leading time there. And Sami still a fraction slower than Gerrit Nieberg earlier on with ping pong, and Gerrit with the single rail. So Marit Skollerud Cox and Carlo van Klapskud. Marit, who is a top 5 finisher in what they call the Piccolo Gran Premio at the Piazza di Siena Rome Nations Cup show this spring. That was with Nelson van Roosacker, the horse she then went on to ride for Norway at the European Championships at A Coruña. Nelson also Marit's horse for the EF Nations Cup finals this year at Avanches in Switzerland. Marit here with the 10-year-old stallion by Carlo van der Helle. Again, not trying to set the world alight in terms of time, but has to make sure they don't just let any chink in the armour open the door to an unlucky rail as well. Good through the double. Last to go. Big wide Agria Oxa. It is clear it's just under 70 seconds. 68.63 for Marit Skollerud Cox. And that is going to go into 5th position of now 5 clear outs. Gerrit Nieberg, no matter how fast he was, those 4 faults are always going to keep him dropping down the order as we build up the clears. Japanese Olympian Iken Sato now. Iken with Kampai. Kampai by Chaco Blue. Say we haven't seen a huge amount of rails, especially not early rails. Iken unfortunately paying the price here very, very early on with number 2 down. Again, it always looked like it was going to be steady, to be honest, even with the very, very early rail. Iken and Kampai looking to set to bring home this steady clear round, or sorry, steady 4 faults, and 68.96 is exactly that. So quite a comparable time to Marit Skollerud Cox moments ago, but Marit doing it with the clear round going into 5th. Iken doing it with the 4 faults goes into 8th at this stage. Well, former winner here in Oslo, Kevin Staut. Kevin, a huge supporter of the World Cup series, has been in his years at the top of the sport. Rarely, if ever, a World Cup final that did not feature Kevin. Cannon Kalan is his ride today. Of course, no surprise by Cannon, this 9-year-old mare. Kevin also with an incredible run on the Longines League of Nations. There has not been a League of Nations show run that he has not been on the French team at. Kevin with a good 5-star win out in Abu Dhabi this year at the season-ending show at Abu Dhabi Equestrian Centre with new Libero Juan Dasco. Absolutely flying around that corner there to the double, so keeping an eye on the time. 63.31 to beat. Kevin Staut goes into the lead, and again just showing how experience, particularly indoor experience, can really, really count and help even on a 9-year-old horse. So Kevin Staut and Cannon Kalan become our ones to beat here in Oslo. Marie-Louise Kingsrud of Norway. So we've got about 48 riders in this class, of course, 40 in the field for the World Cup, and some of these riders won't actually be eligible. They'll be extra OC quoted, but some of the others, this will be their springboard. They are eligible if they qualify to get into that World Cup qualifier, and they'd love to do so and really make their mark. And of course, once you start accruing points That one will help your world ranking, and two will help your World Cup ranking, meaning that shows then have to put you on their invitation list. And we saw that a few years ago when a lot of the young Belgian riders, or young as they were then, used to come over for the North American circuit that at the time went Washington, National Horse Show, Toronto, knowing that they would get their own invitation to be on the start list at Mechelen, and that hopefully all together would mean that in the spring of the following year they would get some World Cup invites and hopefully be able to be in a position to qualify up to the finals. Marie-Louise Kingsrud here with 2 rails down already by the time they jump through the triple combination. The triple combination, albeit on that long reaching stride, is actually coming up very, very nicely for everyone. I don't think we've seen a rail over there on the far side of the ring just yet. And over the last, inside the time, but it is with 12 jumping forwards for Marie-Louise Kingsrud and Canto. Carl Walter Fox and EKA, First Navy Jack. Part of the Swedish team at the Avanche Longines EEF Nations Cup finals this year. Carl Walter also jumped the Al Shirah King George V Gold Cup at Hickstead, the Grand Prix of the CSIO 5-star at Hickstead, which again was a class you can find in the Clip My Horse archive, the whole of the Hickstead summer season in there. Yeah, unfortunately pays the price for that little bit of a daring turn inside number 2. He just unfortunately stalled out a little bit. The horse somewhat overwhelmed by coming around the corner and being faced by that maximum height, -50 vertical at number 6 at that point. Well, I mean, the slight bright point is the competitive time, 65 seconds around the track, and that, of course, inside turn going to have helped a lot with that. But Carl Walter Fox with the 2 down, 8 falls. Well, Yuri Mansur, a twice 5-star winner here over the course of the 2025 season, won the 5-star Grand Prix at Fontainebleau and also the Rome Piazza di Siena Nations Cup Grand Prix this year. Brazilian Olympian Yuri with Incanto VDL for tonight's Crane Norway meter 50 table A speed. Hasn't once come into play, but just to remind you, our time allowed 75 seconds. Our leading time now 60.01 from Kevin Staut. You know, we were looking at 63 as being a very, very fast time at one stage, but you know, now Kevin and his 9-year-old partner have made it right through to a 60.01. So knocking on the door of a sub 60-second time, and now some of our big names still to come may be going to give us that sort of result. So just felt off there. He actually had the middle rail, and Yuri just lets the horse drift out to the left-hand side, away from the third and final element of the triple combination. So that gives him his 8 faults. It's classed as a refusal at the C element, having knocked the B, and he will come around once they have reset the middle element and take it all on again. Of course, very, very positive this time, just schooling the horse here a little bit. You can see him, you know, giving the horse the instructions, making sure that he's getting the reaction. That sequence of changes around the long end of the ring, of course, going out wide as well. He knows the time is long gone, really. So 8 jumping faults, 4 further time faults for Yuri Mansur, and Incanto for that total of 12. Back to Norway, Therese Henriksen. Therese and Juliet Van Hoydonck. Again, a rider who was part of the Norwegian campaign this year at Coruña. That was with another horse, Santos. Also rode at the Avanche Longines EEF Nations Cup finals. This horse top 10 in a meter 50 jump-off class at Avanche during those finals. It's difficult necessarily to know whether Therese would be pleased enough to jump the rest of this big track indoors, 5-star level, clear after that early rail, or whether it's all just going to be that little bit frustrating. Of course, you know, having maybe turned down the temperature in terms of speed, you're changing the dynamic of how the course will ride for you, how much time you have to set up for everything, the time your horse has to make a good shape over the jumps as well. But 4 in 73.37 there for Therese and Juliet. Go down the order, of course, a wee bit. 11th for the moment. So Annelies Vorsselmans, who we mentioned a short while ago, is who made her debut this year, Longines League of Nations debut, a top 10 finisher in the Grand Prix of Riesenbeck on the Global Champions as well. This is C-Culotte WZ. This horse jumped some of the meter 50 tours at Gassin Saint-Tropez with her top horse Trezeguet taking the team challenge on in that Longines League of Nations for the Belgians, who came 3rd on that occasion. So nice job there from Annelies Vorsselmans, and 64.11 on the clock takes podium for the moment here in the Crane Norway meter 50 table A speed as well.
Fra Italia så ønsker vi velkommen Francesco Turturiello, og han er på hesten White Balloon. Representing Italy, Francesco Turturiello.
Francesco Turturiello and Quite Balu. European Championship rider back in Milan with the lovely horse made in Reutershof. Turturiello, that late rail, unfortunately, because he was going so well. 62.84 would have been right there in the mix, remembering it is 60.01 that leads the way for Kevin Staut. That becomes our fastest for Fulter, goes into 8th position for the moment for Turturiello. Jules Van Hoydonck and Minte van de Bisschop. Minte was 22-year-old Jules' young rider horse at Gola in Italy back in 2023, individual 5th and team silver for Belgium. Let's see what the young Belgian talent can do here now against that leading time of 60.01. Yeah, nice to see that from Jules. He'd got his eye in on the Longines FEI Jumping World Cup fence and moved up to it. And that's what you have to do. I mean, in essence, we shouldn't even see you moving up. You should be landing, going very, very strongly. Now, he's lost a little bit of rhythm there trying to get that inside turn. He's okay over the meter 50 vertical and smooths it all back out by the time he gets to the Longines Oxus. So he's putting himself in a good position here, Jules Van Hoydonck. Overall, though, has he got the average turn of foot to be faster than Kevin Staut's 60.01? Oh, he had to take a risk there. He's a long way off it. Jules and Minte van de Bisschop, 3 from home, 60.01 to beat. Could this be our first sub 60-second time? It is going to be close, but I don't think he's quite got the legs of Kevin Staut. No, 60.99. It goes into second place. He is 0.98 of a second slower than Kevin Staut, but what a challenge there from the young rider of Belgium, Jules Van Hoydonck and Minte van de Bisschop. Tani Joosten, Tani and Galdalmi. Tani just out of the U25 ranking of the sport. Again, that fence too down at the end of the ring, very, very influential. They'll be trying to, I think our eventual winner will be going inside it for number 6, going inside it for number 9. And of course, it just increases the difficulty of the approach to those 2 jumps. Tani out that little bit wider there and 69.25. But happy with the clear, I would imagine, with Galdalmi here. One of the first major challenges of the Agria Oslo Horse Show. This meter 50 table A speed, which is a prelude class for the Longines FEI Jumping World Cup qualifier itself here over the course of the weekend. If you are planning your weekend, 3:30 with us here on Sunday, the Longines FEI Jumping World Cup presented by Agria. We carry on here in our Crane Norway meter 50 with Neri Pieraccini. Neri and Newton van Zorgvliet. Newton and Neri were third in a very good 5-star class early on in the week at Rome Piazza di Siena this spring. And having contested the 3-star during the course of the Brussels Stefex Masters, they've been busy then through the tour shows at the likes of Azelhoff Lear and Centaur. Solfleet, Neri Pieraccini, very, very positive around that turn, coming inside number 2, of course, to the wall as they need to, but the time not going to be possible from here. You know, it's going to be about 61 seconds landing out of the double, but not quite. Maybe a little bit of overestimation there, but Neri Pieraccini, 63.28. when our leader is on 60.01. It goes into third for the moment. It just pips Same Eldahan's time by fractions of a second, pushing Same down to fourth and gives us now a grand total of 10 clear rounds in our meter 50. And coming up towards halfway through the starting order here as well. So Equine America, Harald Schwidiel and Johan-Sebastian Gulliksen. Johan-Sebastian, who's been a podium finisher in Longines Global Champions Tour Grand Prix action and rode this horse Harwich this summer at La Coruña at the Europeans. Actually lightly campaigned since the Europeans, just the one show since then, which was the 3-star tour when they were top 10 in the Grand Prix during Global Champions Riesenbeck in Germany. Johan-Sebastian here going to post a good result. It will be in the mix, 63.14, so just that fraction faster than his predecessor in the ring. Neri Pieraccini, and goes into third position. Jules Van Hoydonck still in second, Kevin Staut in the lead, 60.01. But Kevin and Jules, they are 2 seconds in front of everyone else. So on course then, Jens Fredriksen, Diarada's Rose Elite. Diarada Cardento, the breeding of this one, owned by the Lobster Stud. Of course, Lobster Stuteri, incredible supporters here in the Scandinavian countries of top quality sport, in particular dressage, of course, through Antonio Axel Jonsson's long-term partnership with Tine Willems and Sylvain. Jens Frederiksen, Dierados, Rose Elite. Unfortunately, having the Longines fence down, it's the first time we've had problems there. It's Jens, world and European team gold medalist with the wonderful Mark and Cosmopolit over the last few cycles with the Swedish team. Incredible with that run of form that they had for so many years that Sweden looks set disappointingly to drop out of the Longines League of Nations top 10 rankings and will sit out next season whilst they rebuild their points on the standings to try and make it back into the Longines League of Nations for 2027. The Jens and Dierados Rose Elite, just the one down, 67-14.
Mira Oliva H&oslash.
So Mira Oliva H&oslash, 23-year-old Norwegian contender. Looking much more in the history towards the youth championships, of course, for this pair. But they did ride at the EEF Nations Cup finals. They're part of the Norwegian structure there, and also rode in the Drammen Grand Prix. And Drammen here in Norway is a leg itself of the Longines EEF series, giving Norway two absolute flagship shows, a World Cup show and a Nations Cup show, summer and winter. So a pleasing result for the Norwegian audience here with a clear into 9th position, 66.01 for Mira Oliva H&oslash. And that gives them 4 Norwegians on clear rounds and inside the top 10. In fact, 5 Norwegians on clear rounds, with Marit Skollerud Cox sitting just outside the top 10 as well. So Leon Thijssen, of course, legend of the sport, taking some huge classes in his time, including the Madrid Grand Prix. They are in action during the course of the 3 weeks of Morocco Royal Tour just recently, including with this horse, Hello, top 10 in the Meter 55 4-star World Cup Grand Prix at El Jadida in the final week of Morocco Royal Tour. And Leon goes outside, turning back to that vertical at number 6, but he does keep a good rhythm and he keeps moving all the way around the tightest possible turn outside number 2. And there you see maybe why he chose to go outside the last time. He does come inside number 2 this time, up to the wall. Now he's going to go around. He's going to give the horse a long time to read and understand the question. But of course, a lot of time wasted. You see we're already at 62, 63 seconds and the 4 faults. Catches both parts of the double on the way home as well. So Leon Thijssen coming home with 12 jumping and it looking like 4 time penalties there for a total of 16.
Top 5 so far in this 150 speed class presented by Crane Norway. First we have Staut. Second Juliet Van Hoydonck. Tredje mann Johan-Sebastian Gulliksen. Fjerde Neri
So that takes us to halfway through the starting field. Kevin Staut is our leader with Jules Van Hoydonck in second. Johan-Sebastian Gulliksen, the best of the Norwegian riders, in third at the moment. And they are the best of 12 clear rounds all the way down to Tani Joosten and Galdal Me. So as you can see, the team here at the Algria Oslo Horse Show just looking after the surface with a few minutes time, and we'll rejoin the action and see whether anyone can take on Kevin Staut's leading time here in our meter 50.
samles og gjøre et såpass spesielt monteringsarbeid som det.
Da ber vi skipsarbeidet finne en kranleverandør til å hjelpe oss med det store løftet vi har nå. Så er det viktig å finne leverandør med stor erfaring og fokus på sikkerhet. Vi har jobbet tidligere med K1 Norge. De er veldig profesjonelle og har helt naturlig valg for oss å bruke dem på det løftet.
Et godt samspill med oss i kranene og personell på bakken, det at vi kan løfte det meste.
So looking like we're not too far away from rejoining the action here in Oslo, the Agria Oslo Horse Show, the first leg of the Longines FEI Jumping World Cup Western European League with, of course, Kevin Staut, our current leader at the moment, on 60.01.
Jules Van Hoydonck, Johan-Sebastian Gulliksen, Neri Pieraccini og Sanne Thijssen. De er de 5 første, men altså tiden å slå hvis det er noen som vil vinne denne klassen er 60.01. Da ser det ut som det skjer noe i inngangen, og vi ønsker velkommen da starten med 26, først man etter pausen her.
So hoping to join the ranks of our clearance and maybe take over Kevin Staut. We rejoin the action here in our Crane Norway meter 50 table A speed, and we'll be carrying on with Marc Dilasser. Marc for France with Arioto de Gevre. Arioto and Marc, of course, a world-class combination. Marc currently comfortably inside the world's top 100. Arioto de Gevre, a top 5 finisher in the Grand Prix this summer at Dinard in Brittany, won the Grand Prix at Chantilly, which of course is a 4-star Grand Prix there now, but again, that incredible venue of the Chateau de Chantilly. And again, both Dinard and Chantilly are shows where you can catch up on all of the competition and the Grand Prix, of course, through the Clip My Horse and FEI TV archive. So Marc going outside number 2 back to this vertical, and it's very much a mixed bag. We're probably only seeing about 25% of contenders seeking to go inside there. But whether that means that Marc overall, you know, very experienced rider, very experienced horse, can that all come together even with that outside move to try and take on Kevin Staut 60.01. Again, I would slightly suggest that it's not possible from here. This is going to be close, but probably more like 61 seconds. I'm going to be proven absolutely wrong here. Look at this. 59.17, Marc Dilasser and Ariota de Gevre straight after the break go out in front. It's our first sub 60 second time. It is nearly a full second faster than Kevin Staut, 0.85 on the clock for Marc Dilasser and Kevin Staut to hold the top two spots with us here in Oslo. On then to Swedish contender Erika Lickhammer-van Erika with Forever rode Icon Tessa VHL as her team horse this year at the Acaronia European Championships for Sweden. So really interesting, of course, that Marc Dilasser was out around fence 2 and still over a second faster than Kevin Staut. So, you know, that shows that you don't have to take that risk. But, of course, it's down to the foot speed that you can maintain, the average rate of advance that you can have elsewhere on the course to make that slight sacrifice. But, again, if anyone can put it all together, then they have a very, very strong chance. Erika Lickhammer-van and Forever. Going to be, of course, that little bit slower, hoping to join, though, the ranks of the clears. And we've seen a few get even that far and then have sometimes both parts of that double down. So nothing is assured until you're through the finish beams on this track set by Elio Travigliati of Italy. And Erika Lickhammer goes into 14th position.
Representing France, Nicolas Sers, 11 de Revelant.
So staying, well, going back to French riders, Nicolas Sers and 11 de Riverland. Canon Diamant Semi, the breeding here. Nicolas, a recent 4-star Grand Prix winner at Gassin Saint-Tropez. That was with his other horse, Espoir de la Chesnay. And the French really going some here. You can see Nicolas's forward momentum, you know, his real commitment and to the course and contact with the course. You know, he's really riding up to it. Yeah, he's in trouble there coming around that corner. It's such a short turn, and actually it doesn't, and he obviously just hasn't, you know, the horse, after an uncomfortable jumping experience before, just wasn't there for him, or maybe not the 105% perfect spot coming back into the Hooks fence at the end of the line as well. So unfortunately, suddenly 8 faults on the card and an interruption to the time for Nicolas and 11 de Riverland.
Ja, og det ble 8 feilpoeng denne gangen for vår franske venn Nicolas Sers. 1 fault. Nestemann ut startnummer 29, Mexico 29 from Switzerland.
So it is the total of 8:68 seconds, even including the adjustment for the interrupted time there for Nicolas. We go on to Barbara Schnieper. Barbara, who has been a team rider many times over in Nations Cups for Switzerland. Licol. Genius Eldorado van der Zeshoek is her ride for our Crane meter 50. Barbara going well here. It should be middle 60s in terms of the time, and a clear 66.33 for Barbara Schnieper. And that is going to go into 12th position at the moment. No surprise from this field of horses and riders that we're building up this big number of clears. And now it's going to take a little bit of something quite special to get into the top 10, let alone, of course, take over the lead from now Marc Dilasser and Ariota de Gevre. The veteran, Geir Gulliksen, Jimmy, and Island VG. Jimmy, of course, who took the Longines FEI Jumping World Cup qualifier a couple of seasons ago at Gothenburg. Jimmy will have a cut at this. Please the audience as well if he did well. Oh, it just nearly tipped out of the plate there with problems going through the triple combination line for Geir. Island VG on the 4. He gets himself back together. He's obviously on the much longer approach back to this wall, but no interruption. You know, he just shakes himself down, gets back into it. But it's funny, you know, very, very few problems at the triple combination, but when they do cause problems, it is a big problem. So Geir Gulliksen will be inside the time overall, 4:4:72.54 for Geir Gulliksen and Island here for Norway.
Fortsatt det altså Marc Dilasser fra Frankrike som leder klassen på 59,17 etterfulgt av sin landmann Kevin Staut. Still in the lead from France, Marc Dilasser. Second so far, Kevin Staut. Third is Jules Van Hoydonck. Fourth, fjerdemann Johan-Sebastian Gulliksen. And fifth is Italian Neri Pieraccini. Og da har vi nestemann inn på banen som vi ser. Han kommer fra Sveits, han heter Geir og er Just Special. Representing Switzerland,
Geir Juliet now for Switzerland and Just Special VK. Geir Just Special VK by Falaise de Muse. It's a rider we actually saw this year at the Young Rider Championships at Riesenbeck and those Youth Championships at Riesenbeck. Another full show with the juniors, the children on horses and young riders team and individual finals, all available in the archive of FEI TV. Geir, just 20 years old. And something of the bravery of youth there in the pace he had around number two. Unfortunately, Just Special can't quite get there on the same spot and in the same rhythm, and can't get the front legs up quick enough to really activate at that early vertical out of the pace that Gaetan had picked up.
Ja, og 12 poeng, a total of 12 fault this time for Juliet Van Hoydonck. Da skal vi en tur til Norge igjen. Vi ønsker velkommen en rytter som født og oppvokst rett borti gata her, nemlig Oda Charlotte Lyngv&aelr, Clara Pezzoli.
Oda Charlotte Lyngv&aelr. Oda Charlotte, again a Norwegian rider this summer at the Akerøya European Championships. Again, great that Norway able to put together a team. A lot of nations using the Akerøya year, which is a non-Olympic qualifying year, to try and showcase and give some experience to some new names and new riders, new horses. Of course, with next year's World Championships being the first opportunity to pick up Olympic qualification for Los Angeles 2028, and then, of course, the following year's European Championships being one of the final chances. Not bad at all, 62.33 into fourth position for Oda Charlotte Lyngv&aelr and Clara van der Neyen. Jenny Krogstadter and Hipster SV next to take up the challenge. It is still that sub 60 seconds time, only one of them from Marc Dilasser and Ariota de Gevre that leads the way. Kevin Staut and Jules Van Hoydonck with those times of just over 60 seconds. It is a very, very competitive podium. As just saw a moment there, Oda Charlotte Lyngv&aelr going into fourth position with 62.33. That is still some over 1.25 seconds slower than the third place rider, Jules Van Hoydonck. So there's a big opportunity. There's a big sort of field of clear blue water for people to sail into there just behind those leading three and try and take up a position inside the eventual top five of this class. But by the same token, it does just underline how very, very fast those top three were, and not forgetting that Marc Dilasser is over 3/4 seconds faster than Kevin Staut between first and second. Jenny Krogstadter here is going to be low 60s, low to mid 60s by the time she finishes with Hipster, but it should be a clear. And the time, 62.24. So Jenny now overtakes Oda Charlotte Lyngv&aelr for that fourth place. So they're getting closer and closer, but it's still exactly now 1.25 seconds between Jules Van Hoydonck in third and Jenny Krogstadter in fourth. So Vediamo the ride now for Jordy Van Massenhove of Belgium. of the world's top 500 with this Verdi horse, the 13-year-old. Saw them in action during the course of the 5-star Longines Global Champions Tour at Monaco this year. Also jumped for a top 10 finish in the Royal Windsor Horse Show Grand Prix in Great Britain. Of course, won by German rider Gregory Wattele, who is the defending World Cup qualifier winner here of Oslo as well. Say after a long time at the Telenor, more than a decade there in the show's 30-year history, Oslo now moving to the modern venue just between town and the airport. It is the ex-meeting point arena. And what a meeting point it is for the opening leg of the Longines FEI Jumping World Cup Series. In the mix there, 64.20 for Jordy Van Massenhove and Verdiamo. I say Verdiamo has probably, looking at the field of riders, is earmarked at his World Cup qualifier horse. So Jordy, potentially there looking at not taking too much out of the tank tonight for this meter 50 world ranking class, but instead going all in for the world ranking points, the World Cup points, and the valuable prize fund on offer in Sunday's Longines FEI Jumping World Cup qualifier. So Jordy into 10th position. It brings us up to 18 clear rounds. Staying with Belgium, Frederic Vernaet. Frederic and the 10-year-old Croydon-bred Paulus. Paulus was with Frederic over at Spruce Meadows at the beginning of September, so that was for the Masters meeting. Of course, 4 or 5 big 5-star shows there over the summer now, with the summer series at Spruce Meadows in Calgary as well. And Frederic and Paulus, nice to see the horse stand up and carry on, actually. Very, very brave and getting a lot of confidence back from Frederic after that moment where they just went together at all, completely misread the vertical going up the line.
Ender opp med 4 feilpoeng, 66-70 for falls in the time 66-70 over there from Frederic Vernaet.
So Frederic with the 4 in 66.70 overall, goes just outside the top 20 as things currently stand, and about a dozen more to start here in the Crane Norway meter 50. A member of the prestigious Young Riders Academy, supported by the European Equestrian Federation, it is Mel Thijssen now. 24-year-old Mel, who's in action for the Netherlands this year at the likes of the Nations Cup at Falsterbo, jumped well in the Grand Prix at Falsterbo as well. And again, like the whole Thijssen family, busy out during the course of the 3 weeks of the Morocco Royal Tour. But a little bit of a failure to launch here over the Oslo Horse Show at number 1. Mel and Grieg will come around to try again. And what you have to be very, very conscious of, particularly indoors, but in any arena, is the backdrop, what it looks like behind the jump, and maybe what the rails look like against that background. And of course, for these riders here, it's going to be different every class, every session, particularly then Sunday's World Cup. They'll be hanging from the rafters in here in the ex-meeting point arena. Today, some of the areas are quite quiet, and what that also means is that if there is movement, if somebody suddenly appeared up through that stairway as the horse was going down through the first, it's very, very obvious. Whereas if the stands were absolutely full and another head appeared through the stairway, the horse might not read it or see it at all. And Mel is doing a good and a sensible job here of just getting the horse going, trying to rebuild the partnership, rebuild the relationship, because this, you know, is still one of the major opportunities to get ready for that World Cup on Sunday as well, you know, in time and space. With jumping meter 50, it is a recognized prelude class, and it would be nice to feel that you didn't have to jump tomorrow, so you could go forward then as fresh as possible, having qualified for the Grand Prix. So it's in the lap of the gods now. Well, let's see how the rest of the week plays out for Mel Thijssen and Grieg. Finn Boerekamp with Just Penelope, J.W. van der Moorhove. Again, out at the Morocco Royal Tour, took a couple of top 10s with this horse in 4-star meter 40, meter 50 competitions. And that early rail, unfortunately, at number 2. And again, that seems to be happening sometimes. You know, younger riders, Finn is just 20 years old, getting excited is not quite the right word, but getting enthusiastic about the class and really winding up in terms of their pace. Now, the rail on the ground made that an even shorter turn back to the vertical, so they got it well. But yeah, we've seen a few set off like scalded cats and then end up with that second fence on the ground, as the horse just hasn't really been able to get into the groove and the gear of that pace so very early. And I think, you know, it's on yellow cup, so it's already that little bit more technically difficult, but we're not very far off meter 50 maximum height for the class when you do get to number 2 there. I think he's left very little margin on number 2. From memory, it's about meter 48. So had they kept up the pace and the forward foot riding all the way, would that have been a little bit faster? 62 on the clock with the four faults for Finn Boerekamp. And back then to members of the Thijssen family as we go to Sanne Thijssen. Sanne, a winner with the global champions of Madrid, following in the footsteps of her father and also of Valkenswaard. Cupcake, her horse here, was her horse for the Longines League of Nations finals at Barcelona this year too. Sanne and Cupcake going to be in the mix. It's going to be low 60s, 62-21 for Sanne Thijssen and Cupcake, and going into 4th position. So again, we're getting closer to those top 3, but still there's a good bit of distance between our top 3 riders, Marc Dilasser, Kevin Staut, young rider from Belgium, Jules Van Hoydonck, and now Sanne Thijssen. Sanne, in fact, only moving the needle up by 0.03 of a second over Jenny Krogsatte. So Leonie Leonie, who was a rider for the German squad this year at the Nations Cup show in Dublin. Young talent, 26 years old. Carter 1-0. Horse in a good meter 50 jump-off class, the Wiley Trophy Dublin Stakes competition. Leonie also had an international 7- and 8-year-old horse with her at Dublin as well. It's one of the shows, like Brussels Stefex Masters as well, that offers that tour outdoors as well, which I know a lot of the top riders really appreciate. As you say, it's perhaps when you put it in terms of Carlos Alcaraz doesn't have to spend Monday and Tuesday between major Grand Slam tournaments working on the racket. he's going to be using at Wimbledon in 3-4 years' time. However, our riders are doing almost exactly that. Monday and Tuesday between big shows, they're out normally at a training venue or a small show riding the young horses. The time that they can spend in the saddle with their young horses will absolutely repay them in the years to come when they become their 5-star and championship horses. Clear with 65 seconds. Leonie goes outside the top 10 at the moment, 14th on our ranking. And that was the 20th clear round of the division. We've got about 8 or 9 left to start here now as well. Benedikt Sørgstrand Edrunsen. Benedikt, who scored a top 5 finish in the World Championship for young horses, the 6-year-olds this year, with a nice horse called Oreo Brownie. And again, Lanarken, those finals. The 7-year-olds all week and the finals for every age group on Sunday are all in the FEI archive with commentary, the Clip My Horse archive. But of course, every arena is covered at Lanarken. But my colleague Gareth Jenkins with the commentary throughout on the 7th, and then joined by Bill Maguire for the various finals on the Sunday of Lanarken. Benedikt and Corlino PS, of course, a Schockermoller bred by Konrad Obolensky. Most recently in action at Centaur in a meter 55 world ranking Grand Prix there back at the end of September. Just very, very quick out of that corner, and unfortunately they just didn't get there on a true enough stride, a bit close in to the A element of the double, and it just meant that Corlino couldn't do a lot but glance away that front rail on the way up. Benedikt and Corlino 4 fourths in 60.96, a very, very competitive time. Portuguese contender now, Mario Wilson Fernandes and Krachtpatzer. Krachtpatzer and Mario represented Portugal at this summer's Europeans at A Coruña. Only one rider has made it sub 60 seconds, 59.17 for Marc Dilasser of France. Kevin Staut, long-time leader, was just a fraction above 60 seconds, 60.01 was his time. And Jules Van Hoydonck in a close 3rd place. Behind them, it is nearly 1¼ seconds back to the nearest contender, and that's the very fast Sanne Thijssen, just showing the quality of some of the rounds we've seen here over Elio Travagliati's track. And it's going to be interesting because, you know, some riders very, very experienced in the World Cup, they will have known the Telenor Arena inside out and whether it would suit their horse. With Oslo moving to a new venue this year, you know, even maintaining its course design consistency, the arena is going to be a different shape. It's going to have a different feel. How it will ride, what the designer is able to do in it can be intrinsically different, and it will really impact some horses over others, and we could see, you know, a real shuffling of the deck in terms of the type of horse, the type of rider that can be victorious in Oslo. Mario Wilson Fernandes and Krachtpatzer, it's 4 fourths, 64.67.
Som jag sa så är det alltså Marc Dilasser som leder klassen med 59,17, efterföljt av Staut. Jules Van Hoydonck är nummer 3, Sanne Thijssen är nummer 4 och Jenny Krogseter har nummer 50-platsen i klassen.
A few more left to see here in Oslo before we'll see whether it's going to be Marc Dilasser taking the early world ranking class victory.
Och då har vi fått in på banen nästa utföljare från Belgien, Aron Tveisken, som
Aaron Tyskens and Hurricane joining us now. Hurricane, young rider horse for Aaron, for Team Silver for Belgium at Gola in 2023. The rider now 23 years old that we see more and more frequently at the top end, the 5-star level of the sport. And almost direct compatriot Jules Van Hoydonck there in the mix at the moment in that 3rd place. So can Aaron replicate that sort of form, maybe even go a little bit faster? So again, Marc Dilasser doesn't take the inside line. His countryman Jules Van Hoydonck did. Overall, this doesn't feel like it has the punch and the pace to be one of our leading times. So Aaron, it feels like settling in for the steady clear round. It just ends up having to accept quite a long one there at the wall. And as you can see, how the relationship that comes through when they have a little bit of a difficult moment at the wall, how the hooks fence at the end doesn't come up super smooth either. So Aaron is going to be mid-60s here in terms of the time, 66.25, and that will go outside our top 10, 17th in fact. So to the Netherlands, Roelof Bril and Iberico. Roelof, more normally on start lists these days, is the breeder of a lot of nice horses. But has been, for a long time, a very, very good show jumper in his own right. Iberico was Roelof's horse this year for the Grand Prix of Rotterdam during the Longines League of Nations meeting at the Chio in the Kralingse Bos. And again, you see that nice balance because he carried, you know, lovely pace and rhythm out around number 2 back to the big vertical at 6. Whereas some of those who've gone inside have really scrubbed not only their speed, but perhaps more importantly, the rhythm. Oh. And again, I think it's really difficult, to, especially from this angle. The horses are telling you how tight that is. It certainly doesn't look to us like it is super daring or super angle. But actually, the couple of horses who've come around there and said, whoa, 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 I don't understand this, should hopefully give you the impression, if you're not there in the ex-meeting point arena, exactly what a difficult question our designer Elio Travagliati set up there back to the wall for those who really want to try and be competitive. So, unfortunately, quite a few time penalties in the mix there for Roelof and Iberico. So Linda Head, Lorien van Oorschot. Linda, the winner last spring of the Gothenburg leg of the World Cup qualifier in the Scandinavium. Lorien van Oorschot in action just recently in a Grand Prix at Riesenbeck, getting ready for the start of the World Cup series and season. Linda's moving along here. So at times they're just not able to stay 100% with each other, and you just get that bit of friction, which could potentially scrub a little bit of time. But again, just like Roelof a moment ago, wants to carry pace and rhythm around the back of number 2 rather than trying to turn short in front of it. Linda's having to be so soft with her hands because any movement of her hands gets this big reaction from the horse's head and neck. And especially here, she wants the horse to read and focus on this. Beautiful, just taking it out of their stride. So Lorien van Oorschot and Linda Heed not going to make the leading time, but they're going to join the ranks of the clears, and 62.90 won't be bad at all. That is going to go into 7th position. 62.90 in 7th, 62.21 is in 4th. So just behind that leading group of 3, then our scores, our times are stacked up very closely together. Clara Pezzoli and Quasi Della Caccia. Clara, who was over jumping at the 5-star of the Longines Global Champions Tour in New York, the Jersey City venue, and Liberty State Park, and also just recently at the Rome leg of that series as well, which is held, of course, quite incredibly in the Circus Maximus. So an equestrian venue with, what, 2,000 years of history. So Clara takes a 3rd way there. She's out very wide, but in a way is actually able to maintain a greater pace. Does unfortunately catch a rail, so on the 4 faults, and problems here in the triple combination. She was off going into it. So going to call it a day and retire rather than posting that score in the final analysis. So British team rider and championship medalist Joe Stockdale, Millfield Counterfeit. Of course, with that Millfield breeding prefix the same as Millfield Colette. Team bronze at the World Championships in Herning, of course, our most recent World Championships edition. Top 10 last weekend in the leading show jumper of the year and a member of the winning British team in the Nations Cup at the Spruce Meadows Masters in Calgary, Canada at the beginning of September. Actually, of course, set the new record in the 6-bar. Not to be today, unfortunately. Problems inside the triple combination. And again, you know, it wasn't a super influential jump, but with Clara Pezzoli a moment ago just being a long way off and having 2 rails out of it. It's Joe then with the rail and the stop. So clear through it the second time of asking, but Millfield Counterfeit and Joe Stockdale going to be on quite a big score here as our penultimate pairing in the Crane Meter 50. So Thomas Ryan now, Thomas with Jezebo BC. Thomas, a former rider on the team at the Europeans in Windsor in 2009. Said the Norwegian, the Oslo leg, fallen a couple of times to Irish riders. Jezebo going all right. Again, the time is not going to be right up there in the mix, but again, nice to get the week of jumping underway with a strong clear round. That puts a marker down for the week ahead. And, you know, mentally, internally for the riders, you know, just to catch that rail on the way home, so frustrating because it was so very, very close. 66, not a bad time, you know, without really trying, you know, a horse with the foot speed and the swing speed to get a 66, and so very close to being a clear round. It was 4 faults though, just 1 from home there for Thomas Ryan. It's another one of our riders under 30 in the top of the sport. It is Emil Hallundbaek of Denmark. Emil and Cannonel, another Cannon, of course. Jalisco was his ride for the World Championships at Herning back in 2022, and how fantastic that Jalisco had also been his young rider horse on 3 occasions, including to Team Bronze, before going on to be his senior World Championship horse. Competitions recently at Azelhof and De Volden, amongst others, for Emil Hallundbaek and Cannonel, getting ready for the Winter World Cup season. Tough choice for these riders, of course. You know, if you're on the World Cup campaign, you have to be here in Oslo. For the Danish riders in particular, they have a very, very good indoor show at home in Herning this weekend. It is playing host to a World Cup, but that is the opening leg of the FEI Dressage World Cup Western European League. And the Grand Prix actually just completed there in Herning, and looking forward to the Grand Prix Freestyle to Music, which will be the first leg of that World Cup. And of course, both the jumping and the dressage World Cup finals going to Fort Worth, Texas in April of next year. Emil, of course, with the rail, won't be featuring in the top of the order here with us tonight in Oslo. As I said, planning the rest of your week here, if you're watching Oslo, it is that Sunday is the Longines FEI Jumping World Cup qualifier, 3:30. The first horse and rider in the ring in that meter 60 competition. As I say, we do have FEI Dressage World Cup action this weekend. We've got Jumping Ponies Trophy action from Herning as well. We've got the FEI WBFSH Studbucks Trophy and World Championships for eventing from Le Lion d'Angers. We've got the 5-star Mars Maryland Horse Trials and Major League Show Jumping from Tryon. So much on the network this weekend. But looking down the ranks here, you can see how our designer Elio Travagliati has set up the week here by giving 22 of our competitors, very nearly half of the field, clear rounds. And actually then, I would say the 4 faults will take up most of the rest of the scores here down the order. Very, very nuanced course that caused problems, but not too many problems. and let the clock do a lot of the heavy lifting as well. And my goodness, those top three really made it all their own. Marc Dilasser, Kevin Staut and Jules Van Hoydonck, with Sanne Thijssen leading the chasing group in fourth. Jenny Krogsetter and Oda Charlotte Lyngv&aelr of Norway inside the top 10. So too Johan-Sebastian Gulliksen. Clears for Norwegian riders Paul Flam and Victoria Gulliksen and Mira Oliva H&oslash and Marit Skollerud Cox. So a good start to the week for the home riders as well here at the Agria Oslo Horse Show. So here in the ex-meeting space arena, we'll be getting on with the award ceremony. Do stay with us for that, as that concludes the 5-star program today. The next competition here, the 2-star Grand Prix from Oslo. But as I say, so much sport this weekend. So here they are coming forward for awards, and it is Marc Dilasser leading the way. Kevin Staut, Jules Van Hoydonck, our top three here for our major world ranking class, the meter 50 table A speed here on Friday of the Agria Oslo Horse Show, leading of course to that 3:30 Longines FEI Jumping World Cup qualifier on Sunday here in Oslo. Being congratulated then on behalf of the show and Crane Norway, our sponsors. Marc Dilasser taking the victory, the only sub 60-second time with or without penalties. He really was in a class of his own. He went out wide, turning back to number 6, but he carried the pace as congratulations made now to Kevin Staut, the Olympic gold medalist, former European champion in third, wearing his armband as a member of the Young Riders Academy. Jules Van Hoydonck then in the mix of those top 3 very, very fast rounds for Belgium. Sanne Thijssen then leading the chasing pack, back about 1 1/4 seconds slower. Sanne in 4th position for the Netherlands.
Congratulations, Sanne. Og femteplassen den går til Norge ved Jenny Krogsæter og Hipster. Gratulerer, Jenny.
Jenny Krogsæter taking the top rank of Norway in 5th place, but Norway with plenty to celebrate, with 3 inside the top 10, and I think overall it was 6 of our clear rounds. So Marc Dilasser has the Marseillaise play out for him, as we've had the Marseillaise play several times over for French winners here of the World Cup qualifier of Oslo in the past as well. Well, that concludes our coverage of 5-star jumping today. As I say, don't forget our next major competition from Oslo on the network is going to be that Longines FEI Jumping World Cup qualifier on Sunday at 3:30. But in the interim, you can get all of your sporting fix with Jumping Ponies Trophy from Herning, FEI Dressage World Cup from Herning, Mars, Maryland 5-star eventing from North America, Major League Show Jumping from North America with the leg at Tryon this weekend. Back to eventing then for the FEI WBFSH Eventing World Championship for young horses, the 6 and 7-year-olds at the Lyon d'Angers, and of course so much more as well beyond those international overarching feature classes as well. We hope you'll enjoy a great weekend of equestrian sport wherever you are, but for the moment from us here in Oslo, it is goodbye for now.
Det en 2-stjerners Grand Prix, det vil si, altså det 40 hester som har kvalifisert seg til den Grand Prix gjennom tidligere kvalifikasjonsklasser her under Oda-Charlotte og det 40 startende cirka, og vi klare